On this episode of the Victory Podcast, we have Chris Hixson, co-founder of the Trent Dilfer QBIQ System. And what Chris is going to talk a little bit about is how he developed the system with both Trent Dilfer and John Brenkus to help high school level and college level quarterbacks identify defenses from a pre-snap perspective. And we also got to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Team Builder. Team Builder provides strength and conditioning software to more than 500 high school programs nationwide, as well as the NFL. Whether you write your own programs, have a full-time strength coach, or if you need a strength coach, Team Builder can make the weight room more efficient, more accountable, smarter when it comes to measuring your team's progress. So check them out as well. And let's get into the podcast. All right, everybody, we have Chris Hixson here from QBIQ. Chris, talk a little bit about your football journey and how it all started for you. I know you grew up in Texas and then you ended up moving to Washington. Can you talk about your days at the Pop Warner Field and then how it was able to come through to high school, where I believe I read a stat that you have a completion percentage of 72% in your high school, and the team you played on was one of the best in Washington.
Should be 72.
72, okay.
It's not hard to do in the wing tee, I'm telling you. Not hard to do with all those flat passes. They're
yep.
Bumps. But, yeah, so it's awesome you talk about Pop Warner. So Texas football, the football is an amazing thing in Texas, right? So I got to grow up in Texas, and at least until I was 10. But by that time, I'd already had, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old football. So I had 4 years invested into the important world of football in Texas. So it's definitely a different state for football. I remember, I was going out for quarterback every year. I was a bigger kid, and they would always have me play line. But don't get me wrong, I love football so much, and I love the authoritarian part of it, where it's a militaristic ranking system. So if coach says do this, I was 100% in and never complained about anything. So I would go play line. I started out at center, moved out to tackle, went to tight end, then nose guard. I was everywhere. But I was always on the line. So anyway, I always wanted to play quarterback, and I got a chance to go out to a football camp starting when I was 9 years old in Pennsylvania, and just started doing the camp series with these guys. And actually ESPN, this is how we found out about it. ESPN put out that they're the #1 camp in the country, #1 contact camp. So my dad just sent me there, and I'd be gone to 6 to 8 weeks of every summer following this camp around. And every week was a new camp. So each week I'm getting coached by college coaches. The NFL quarterbacks would come in and do clinics on the weekends, and I would do those 100%. And next thing you know is, over time, the world's a magnet. So the more that you revolve yourself around something, eventually it's going to give it to you. So finally, when I hit freshman year and I had already moved to Washington, I had finally gotten the position of quarterback, and obviously never let go of it.
How much those camps help you out as a kid? Do you think that was the benefactor for ultimately setting the foundation for your career?
I think it was a large part. I think mostly it's the intangible that is what's going to drive someone's success. The intangible is the unquantified, part of you that the want, the heart. And here's the beautiful part about it. Growing up in Texas and football just being a part of everyday life, it was never what people talk about now, a grind. I go out and I grind, and you see all this social media stuff. And to me, it was oxygen. So I'm just breathing. You don't remind yourself to breathe. I didn't have to remind myself to love football or go out and work. It was just I loved the process. And my process was a journeyman's process where, nothing came easy, which is a good thing. So it keeps you at work at all times.
That's a good point. And I think just, making that move and then having it, as you said, football is oxygen. I love that quote. Now you ultimately go to your senior year in Washington, and, you go from Washington to Rhode Island. How does that happen? And how does that recruiting process happen for you?
Well, we said journeyman's, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So here's the deal. Obviously, my dad had car dealerships. He had started one up in Washington, And so that's why we went over there. But I went from basically I was in the wing team. I didn't have a junior year. I was at Eastside Catholic High School through my junior year of football, and I kind of started the wave of changing schools. I changed schools because we weren't a very good program back then at Eastside. So I changed schools to Bellevue High School, which not a super beneficial program for offense for quarterbacks because it's the wing T, and at that point we were under center. But probably a big key, to my having to change and make a forceful event like that is that I had no junior year. I had mono that year. I had my vocal cords in every training camp has always been an issue. Mm-hmm. So when I actually came back out, I left that season. I think it was the second game where I played the first 2 games that year, my junior year. Then I couldn't play for 4 or 5 weeks. Then I got cleared, but I couldn't talk. My voice wasn't working. So the only way I could be on the team is for the next 2 games is I played on the line. The last game I played as quarterback. I played defensive end. Anyway, so long story short is I went to Bellevue High School, and Bellevue High School ran the wing T. We were unbelievable. We were named the Washington State's best team in history, blowing teams out left and right. We had a number of guys go on and play college football. Amazing team. And then unfortunately, with that junior year, I didn't get a chance to get recruited that much because that's kind of like back then. That's when you hit the map, and still, true to this day, that's the key year to cause traction. I just wasn't able to cause traction without having a junior year. We did really well, but I wasn't blowing up the stats. I think I threw for 700 or 800 yards in my senior year. And I only played 2 quarters a game. I mean, we blew everybody out, so I never finished the game. Mm-hmm. In fact, I was also the punter, and I think I punted 2 or 3 times that year.
Wow.
Oh, listen to this. I was also the kicker. And here's what I never attempted a field goal because we always scored touchdowns. I got second team all kicker, all conference kicker. And I never tried to field goal. It was only because of the points that I had because of all the touchdowns.
Yeah, just after extra point. Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
How crazy is that? But anyway, bottom line is, well, I guess, and to go back on the previous question, how important was the camp that I went to? The guy who ran the camp, I was extremely good friends with, and he took my tape, and he went to the college coaches convention, and he handed it to Floyd Keith, his former coach in college, and they were a late hire, so they still had all their scholarship offers. They hadn't recruited yet. And so anyway, next thing you know is I get an offer from them. It was my lone standing offer. And it being my lone standing offer, I was obviously happy to take that. I did have some nice things because I did make a video and I sent it out. It probably would have been right about signing day or right after signing day. And I got great responses from like the Penn State quarterback coach or offense coordinator. He wrote me a great letter. He said, listen, we would have offered you, but we're out of scholarships. We'd love to have you as a preferred walk-on if you can come out. And I wasn't, I never thought about preferred walk-on at all. So anyway, got the offer, went out to Rhode Island.
Yeah. What was that? What was that recruiting process like for you?
It's a lot like every kid, right? Mm-hmm. It's a dark, hard thing, unless you're like a 3+ star these days. It's a tough road because you don't know what coaches are thinking. They're constantly going around. You hear they're going to see this kid. They're going to see this kid, and they're coming to see you as well. Well, back then they didn't do so much of that, but it's just a tough process because you don't know what coaches are thinking, and then also what they're saying to you is not always the truth. And I know a lot of parents and players that have been recruited are sitting here listening to this going, oh yeah, I know exactly what he's saying.
Yeah.
So, you do go to URI and you absolutely light it up, well over 8,000 passing yards. So, you're right up there with Dan Orlovsky. We love our tour of New England quarterbacks that tear it up in local colleges here. What were your expectations at the end of your time in college in terms of, did you think that you had a chance to go pro? I mean, you lit it up. I'm sure that you had some expectations, but how did you navigate setting those and what was next?
So expectations, I always knew I was going to be playing football, playing professional. I had no doubt in my mind. Everywhere I'd gone, I had done well. Even that camp that I went to also has a free agent camp that's ran back then by Jim Garrett from the Dallas Cowboys, Jason Garrett's dad. And I'd known him for years. And so anyway, I just, I can compete with anybody, especially arm strength wise and accuracy wise. That wasn't a question. And the dual threat wasn't really the big thing back then. So it was, just a no-brainer for me to make that step. And, essentially I didn't make the step because that step right out of college in those things. And I'll tell you a great story. I had started a family early. So as a young kid and then separating out, you just don't have the responsibility level of being able to handle things as well, right? So it's like that pie chart. Where are you devoting most of your time? And I don't think I did well enough in that. I remember this when I was meeting with my coach, my exit interview, and he told me where he thought I placed. He said, he goes, I think you're better than this guy. He was telling me NFL wise where he thought I fit. And so that again, I got good confirmation. I'm definitely making the step. And then he told me a drill that they love to do, which is start the clock on the snap, take a 5-step drop and throw the ball. And what they do is they start the clock on the snap and then they stop the clock when the ball goes to the line of scrimmage. So they get footwork, they get arm strength, mechanics, kind of a total time frame on that. And so I went to town on that drill. I mean, I was murdering it. And then next thing you know is I didn't have an extra set of eyes on me. And when you exit your college structure, you don't have eyes on you when you're working anymore. You're your own entity. It's like running your own. It's like being an entrepreneur, basically. So next thing you know is I may have had the best time, but when I went for my tryout with Dallas, my first tryout with Dallas, the ball was coming out ugly. The mechanics weren't. They were certainly quick, but they weren't quality. And so he was like, what's going on? And Jim Garrett had a good heart-to-heart with me. So he gave me some things to work on. I did. I worked on them. Came back for my second tryout. I was better. I wasn't great. Then he gave me a couple more things. So a couple weeks later, I went for my third tryout. And next thing you know is he said, all right, the tryout started at 8, finished about 8:45. At 9 o'clock, he's like, let's call Switzer. So he calls Switzer. And literally the night before they had signed, I was literally getting signed to Dallas that morning. And Switzer had signed a kid the night before. Charlie, he was a workout dream. Can't read a defense for nothing. I'm not going to say his last name now that I said that. And anyway, they had signed that kid, so I missed my time frame. And then I got put on 8 short lists for NFL teams. So I'm sitting there watching preseason games, looking for injuries, right? What a bad situation. Sit there and be hoping for guys to get hurt. It's unbelievable. And so anyway, next thing you know is I didn't play for 3 years. I just started kind of real life stuff. And then had another opportunity to go back in.
Awesome. And then ultimately you do end up in the AFL and you light it up in the AFL. What was that experience like going from the short list to the AFL after that?
Well, AFL is a fun game. I mean,
it's quick. It's quick. Yeah. And
I mean, listen to this. You take a guy who runs a 4.40. You say, hey, listen, we're going to do something really cool. We're going to cut the field in half. Okay. So we're going to make it a super fast game. That's not enough. Now let's cut it widthwise in half. So now it's a quarter size of the field. Then you say that's not good enough. I'm going to give you a running start. So now you, instead of running a 4.4, you're technically running about a 3.9. And this is why the high scores are. And DBs just get burnt all day long. Mm-hmm. And it's so much fun because it teaches a quarterback, one, what great lessons. You're constantly reading the defense. You're throwing every down. So it's a great environment to learn different types of footwork. You know, you would change your footwork per what the defense is giving you. And you had to drop fast, read fast, throw fast. And I'll tell you, you know, it was an awesome environment to learn from. I remember when I was playing for the Florida team the very first year, we had the highest average, highest offensive production in AFL history. And that was exciting. And then we moved on to I moved out to Arizona and had a great experience out there playing for Danny White.
Yeah, and then from there, you know, ultimately, when did you know that, all right, it's time to hang it up and then start, obviously, the post-football life that you've started now?
Well, I played for 2 years out in Arizona, and then I came out to Georgia, played 1 year in Georgia. I actually had a back injury my second year.
Yeah, in Arizona, right?
Yeah, and I remember, gosh, you talk about timing, and this is, you know, the NFL is everything about timing, and really any football. But I remember the second game of the year that year, I had a really good game, and there was a guy from Kansas City Chiefs coming to watch our wide receiver, who was extremely good. And I ended up, I think I completed my first 13 footballs or something, 13 passes. And, you know, in our offense, everything's adjustments. So whatever the defense is doing, they can't be right, and things are super fast. So my feet would change on every single drop, and it was always a pre-snap read. So next thing you know is Lynn Stiles is the vice president of Kansas City Chiefs. He comes in a locker room afterwards, and he puts his hand out and he says, "Hey, I'm Lynn. I'm Lynn Stiles, vice president of Kansas City Chiefs. I'm the guy who brought in Kurt Warner, and everything you did tonight reminds me of exactly what Kurt Warner did." And this guy had been with Dick Vermeil since the Eagles, right? Mm. And I'm sitting there going, Kurt Warner, this is an amazing conversation because he had just won 2 Super Bowls and so forth, and it was pretty exciting. So anyway, he goes, "We want to bring you into camp," and I was super pumped about it. But he said the same things. He said, "Your footwork changed on every single play. You read your defense pre-snap. It's exactly what Kurt would do. And he knew where he was going with the ball before the snap of the ball. And your footwork, you know, adapted to what the time frame was going to be." And he goes, that's what we need. So anyway, I was pumped about that. Then I had a back injury that wasn't going to allow me to do that. So I had surgery the day after the last game. It was 2 days after the championship game that year. I mean, I couldn't feel my toes for 4 months. Mm. So it was pretty significant. And then I obviously couldn't go to Kansas City.
Yeah. Got it. And go ahead, Steve.
No, so all right, that kind of you know, provides a lot of now context for, you know, when you see your time in the AFL. So I'm sure that the back injury and surgery has a lot to do with the end of your time as an athlete. Obviously, with that in mind, though, you weren't done. You have you started, I believe, with like a passing academy. What was the evolution of what you were doing to still be in the football realm to ultimately get to QBIQ?
Well, I think mainly to sit there and say that I'm OCD about the quarterback position, that it's ran exactly right, that the detail of the game is absolutely expanded upon. Like, why do we do things? What should the footwork be? How should the body mechanics be, passing wise and footwork wise, and all based on what you see, not purely going out and training a kid. You know, the simple. Of course, you start out like this: the simple placement of the footwork and how you need to have that perfect drop and the perfect throw. It's not always going to be that. You want to create the adjustments, the changeable stuff, based on what the defense is providing.
So saying that, Coach, like, what are your thoughts on? I didn't mean to cut you off there. What are your thoughts on the whole 7-on-7 game? Do you think it's beneficial, or do you think there needs to be an added layer of that to get quarterbacks under duress while they're taking their drop and getting ready to throw the football?
Well, ultimately, I mean, you know, we can only do contact certain parts of the year. That's still consistent with generally how it used to be. Yeah. So it provides more environment. And I'll give you a great conversation piece that Trent and I were talking about a couple weeks ago up in Nashville at the draft. You know, he was like, you know, I'm not a big fan of 7-on-7, you know, for some reasons, and I like it for some others. And I was only concurring. I was saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know, but here at Lipscomb, we need every single rep we can get because we're kind of youthful on the skill side of things. And we need to just pitch and catch. And the more duress we can give it, which, you know, 7-on-7 provides, you know, kind of an environment of compression, obviously with defense. You just don't have the front line. But there's obviously laziness that happens in the footwork. You know, the antithesis side is that. And you have the offensive line of the Dallas Cowboys of the 90s. You know, for 4 seconds, you can, you know, take time back there, which is insane to me. That provides a very rare comfort level to the quarterback. But yeah, so I mean, it's good and bad, but I like it. You're constantly throwing, and I think that's another reason why quarterbacks these days are better accuracy wise.
Yeah. Now, with your passing academy that you started, was that mainly what you were doing when you first started the passing academies? And we'll get into QBIQ in a little bit, but as far as building a foundation for QBIQ, did it start with those passing academies?
Yes. So when I was previously saying that I'm kind of an OCD guy about how it needs to be processed physically, also mentally, I wrote a book back then. It was called The Quarterback Manual. It's basically the QB 101 to how to play like a pro, right? And a lot of this stuff started back then. It was a 100-page book, and it was, I mean, it covered basically all the details. It even had a Lombardi chapter in there of, you know, the 11 pillars to being successful. And it talked about, you know, having affirmations and, you know, it had every detail that you could think about, a kind of a 360 approach to a successful athlete, not a quarterback. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I would coach kids and often we would look at game film, and that's kind of where QBIQ started growing from. I didn't know it back then, but that's where it was growing from. I would see kids make ridiculous decisions. They would snap the ball and they'd be staring things down. And it was like, why would you even stare that down unless you're baiting someone? Yeah. Why would you even stare that down or be looking at it for that long when pre-snap, you know, it's not even going to work. So that's when the mantra is starting, like the QBIQ mantras of the concepts. Like if you saw cover 2, it was 2, 4, 6, 7, bang 9, 2, 4, 6, 7, bang 9. Those are the routes that work. And then essentially that's the growth pattern. The passing academy still exists today, but pretty much people don't know they're working with the passing academy. They're working with Chris Hixson, basically.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's, I think a lot of quarterbacks go through that too, where if they don't, and this is, you know, kind of how Victory was born too, right? Just the coaching aspect of it and really getting the coaches on board with seeing what the quarterback is seeing. That way they're both on the same page. I think a lot of times there's that disconnect between, hey, I want you to throw this in a cover 2, go do it. And the kid gets on the field and all of a sudden the lights are on, the defense is moving, and things get a little bit chaotic too. So talk a little bit about your QBIQ system and how you can ease the process for a kid that gets on the field.
Okay, I'll give a couple examples. Well, but I'll take you a little bit of a trip through the book, right? So the book is set up where it is a book to work integrate and organically work with every offense, right? Essentially, you take your playbook, chapter 1, you already are your playbook. And that's a process. That's a pro approach to understanding your plays. Like, for instance, you read it 5 times, you draw it 5 times, you run it 5 times. And it's a workbook. So you do it actually right in the book. And then from there, you move on. You go to you go to chapter 2, which chapter 2 is you actually learn the concepts of QBIQ. And every single defense has weak spots. They have strong spots and weak spots. And so we created a concept base that actually works into those. Like, for instance, a couple examples, like we said, cover 2 is 2, 4, 6, 7, bang 9. Those are the routes that work. Cover 3 is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, bang 8, bang 9 on the hash, and so on. And so if we take that and we actually take an example, don't bring in situation just yet. But if I sat there and we have these great flashcards that make the kids think, but if we flipped over a defense, say it was cover 2, and let's say the play package is trips, and we got number 3 running a corner, and we got number 2 running a post, and we got number 1 running a hitch. Okay? Simple post, corner, and a hitch on the outside. And so with that thinking, if we saw cover 2 and we say 2, 4, 6, 7, bang 9, we didn't say 0, which that's what the 1 receiver was running, a hitch. And we didn't say 8, which is the 2 is running the 8. But we did say 7. So right away, the quarterback's thinking what works best here is the 7. And through the QBIQ book, you would sit there and learn that the post route would hold the safety. And depending on the situation, that corner is either going to be running his normal base 2, or he might be slide skipping back. And if that's so, that's my problem key. And my problem key, so now I just got to hone in on my problem key. But the bottom line is I know that the 7, what this does is it builds anticipation.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a simple rhythm of it. So if I was to take that play package into every single defense, it'd go like this. Cover 2 is the 7. Cover 3 is going to be the 0. Cover 4 is going to be 8 to 0. Cover 1 is going to be 7 to 0 quick. Cover 0 is going to be 8, 7, 0 quick. Cover 6 to the boundary is going to be 7. Cover 6 to the field is going to be 8 down to 0. So now all of a sudden they learn the algorithms. And tell me how your quarterback's going to react when he knows the algorithm to every single defense based on the play package and his anticipation. That means he just made his line twice as good because his read and the ball is out fast.
I like how you use that, the algorithm, right? Because that's what essentially it is on a defense, right? It's when they're in a too high look and playing cover 2, these spots are going to be open. It is what it is. There's too much field to cover. You don't have enough players to cover it. So there's always going to be the weak spots that are in there. I want to, it says around your shirt, Trent Dilfers QBIQ. You have partnered with Trent Dilfer and John Brenkus from Sports Science. Can you talk a little bit about John's involvement in QBIQ and how he's helped progress the system as well?
Absolutely. Well, he was kind of the point man for that group in the Soul and Science. Those guys got together and started going on the NFL Network with a program called Soul and Science. And it's basically a breakdown of key and awesome quarterbacks coming out, going into the NFL. And so, and you're talking about, Trent with the best analysis of quarterback, the most critical analysis, and you got John, the science of the game. And John was kind of the point man in calling us and letting us know that they were interested in doing something. And so I got to know John, and John's very business heady. I mean, he's, you're talking about a 6-time Emmy winner, New York Times bestseller for a book he wrote. He studied over 2,000 athletes. The guy has a resume, and it's long. And you talk about a guy like that that's on your team, that's super exciting. So when he started talking to us, and then Trent, and it came on, it was definitely a stamp of credibility for what we've been doing. You're always looking for that. Also gives us a great stage and loudspeaker to let everybody know this tool is going to help out OCs, quarterbacks, wide receivers. It'll probably replace any process to a quarterback across the nation. I bet you within 5 years, every quarterback, over 90%, will be using this.
Really?
Well, there's nothing that teaches this. There's never been a program that says, here's the pre-snap reading, here's what basically is going to work the best into this. It's always been progression oriented. It's been snap the ball. We're going to take this guy, and if he goes back, we're going to put him in a bind. If he goes back, we'll throw under. If he comes up, we'll throw over. If it's muddy or gray, we're going to hit the check down or come to the backside bread and butter. The bread and butter being a curl flat or something like that. And that's a true progression-oriented process. This doesn't do that. And I'll give you a great comment. Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice said about Joe Montana that he's the best quarterback ever because he knew where he was throwing the ball 98% of the time before the snap. Before the snap. So again, before the snap. And so this guy could arguably be one of the second best in the ever historically. Maybe guys, San Francisco guys like to say he's the best, I'm sure, because he went 4 times, came back 4 times. But the bottom line is, you're talking about one of the best ever and he knew where he was throwing the ball 98% of the time before the snap of the ball, meaning that the defense is giving away information, meaning that he knows what's going to work best, and this is the only program that tells you what that is. And I'm not talking about hitches, guys. I'm talking about full concept routes. He knows what's going to work best and situationally appropriate, which the book QBIQ addresses.
So how does QBIQ account for when defenses are rolling coverages? Maybe that's getting a little too deep into it, but
no, not at all. That's right in the heart of it. So bottom line is, if I looked at a defense and I had even corners with the inside foot back, and you had offset safeties. Now let's also say we're in a 2x2 to make it easy. If we're in trips, you could have that to the single side, right? But if we're in 2x2 and they're not square balance on top, and they're like this, I know for a fact it's cover 3.
Yeah.
If you had corners head up, inside foot up, or inside shade, inside foot up, and they're even if they're not even, with the inside foot up and inside shade, and they're off balance, I know it's cover 1. If I had off balance corners, inside foot back, and I had off safeties, I know it's cover 6. So we address that clearly about how to. We have a defensive ID process in the book that tells you how to ID them. It simplifies everything.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things for younger quarterbacks to learn too, is just IDing the defense and then being comfortable with the play call and then being able to execute it all in one.
You know, great point, because commonly what our coaches do now is we just identify middle safety or middle field open or closed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's commonly the only practice that we have. And what we want to do is, because bottom line is, if you don't do this process, whether NFL guys know this stuff, if they've been 3 years in the pros, they know this stuff. They don't know they know it, but they do, because there was never an organized approach at teaching this. It was just, you picked up bits and pieces as you went along. And there's 50 quarterbacks a year coming out of college that are physically able to play at the NFL level. But the reason they don't is because they don't know this stuff where they do. That's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Why else could I don't know. I think of schools, guys coming from smaller schools. Joe Flacco stands out to me, coming from Delaware, right? When's the last time Delaware put out a great quarterback? You don't necessarily think that way.
Yeah.
Right? They can come from anywhere with the right tutelage.
Yeah, no doubt. And the answer to that is Gannon.
I asked the wrong guy.
I like Leo Hamlet too. Leo was awesome, but he was a true wing T quarterback, so he wasn't going to fit perfectly in the NFL. I love Leo. He gave us plenty of problems.
So, Coach, what do you see the biggest flaw in quarterbacks that come to you, or maybe they come to the QBIQ system and right off the bat, you know that there's this flaw in the quarterback, and then, I guess let's start there. What's the biggest flaw that you see in these quarterbacks nowadays?
Okay.
Let's talk from a mental standpoint. I don't know if that would help narrow it down a little bit more.
Well, I'll give you a physical one because this is one of my pet peeves, I guess.
Yep.
Because of the shotgun quarterback era, you get guys that are so chin forward and their gun is over here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So their mechanics are poor, especially throwing to the right, because you got to bring your left side. And let's take you're throwing a quick game, a hitch or a quick out or slant, whatever. You're slow to bring, especially coaches that make their kids do the drop step. If you do the drop step with the left step, you're even more delayed getting this left side all the way over there. So our percentages throwing over here now are less than throwing to the left, which was reversed back then under the center. So bottom line is, these guys are so chin forward, and we don't want to talk about mechanics. When they drop back with an open shoulder, and their chin is over here. So it's kind of a cross angle instead of being here where you're more biomechanically sound. So it causes your elbow to drop and causes inconsistencies with the accuracy big time. You get a very quick release, which is not good. You need quality as well. And we always talk about what I identify as an efficient release, and it involves the 2 Qs, which is quick and quality. And you never sacrifice one for the other. You want it every single time. Unless, look, if someone's coming down on me, I got to do a flip. That's a different deal. But that's the physical part that bothers me, plus the footwork in the shotgun era. the footwork is very poor, and it's our timing. Our footwork is like the 8-beat count, you know, to a dance. And I always tell my guys, you'll never get a girl to go to a dance with you if you don't get the footwork down. I'm telling you right now. So the bottom line is that, you know, that's footwork and biomechanics. Those are my 2 pet peeves.
Wait, so when you see Patrick Mahomes and what he did this year, how much of that are you just say he is on a different planet, or you just say he is getting so lucky because this is so flawed? You know, what's your takeaway when you see some of that stuff?
Oh man, you're just talking extreme arm talent. Arm talent. I mean, that guy is an athlete with, you know, just one of the most gifted all-range releases. And he can do anything. I mean, I would take him in a heartbeat. I love that quarterback. I think he's awesome. Plus, I mean, look where he came out of, and the stats he threw up were amazing. I think, was it him and Baker Mayfield that threw for 1,000,000 yards in one game? It was unreal. The score was like a basketball score. It was like 100-98 or something. And it just went backwards and forwards. I mean, and it's because there's no defense in that league, that conference, I know. But that offense is on fire. And that guy, his stats were amazing. So he's a proven guy. He can throw from any range. He's awesome to watch. I love watching that guy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And Coach, as we start to wrap up here, I just want to talk about future plans with QBIQ and any big things that you guys have coming up as we start to approach football season.
Humongous things like that. What do we got, Coach? Well, all I can tell you, number one, it's going to change. The current existence of it and its product base are going to change. Any coach that gives it to their quarterbacks and wide receivers, they're going to put gas all over their offense. I'm telling you right now, you will pour gas all over your offense. And what's exciting is when you get coaches who get the system and you see the wool come off their eyes, it gets them to be a better play caller. It gets the quarterback to have more trust from the coach going, I know what you're thinking, and I know what you want out of this. I mean, the level, the intellectual conversation that comes out of this is amazing. So it's exciting to see guys get the playbook or get the system book. It's exciting to see guys do the flashcards with all the kids, and you get to see videos. We get videos sent to us all the time. And you see these guys competing in that range. It's unbelievable, and what it can do for their intellectual and decision-making. Now, in terms of where we're headed, I can't really go into that, but it's exciting. I mean, it's off the charts exciting.
Can't wait. Yeah. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
I'm on board.
Well, hey, we're not in this for some, just staying at the level we're at. We got Trent Dilfer and John Brenkus on board. We're definitely heading somewhere.
Absolutely. Now, Coach, where can people find you? QBIQ System, is that throughout social media as well? Can you give the social tags and the website?
All social media platforms at QBIQ System. Obviously, we have a YouTube channel. You can check out some good videos there. There's another good platform we're coming out on at Drafter, where you can actually subscribe to us and get actually more specialized information. Also, at the same time, if you want to look at the products and want to understand more about what QBIQ is about, of course, social media is key. We give out a ton of information. But go to QBIQsystem.com. QBIQsystem.com.
QBIQsystem.com. So we can find the QBIQ system, the flashcards, the videos, all the above are located on the website.
The Pro Throw's on there. The Pro Throw is a great biomechanical tool. You can put it anywhere you want. It's very mobile. That's a great thing to work with to help guys get that snap down. Like a Tom Brady. I see you with the Patriots jacket there. And, when you talk about Tom Brady, think about a cover one vert. You got cover one vert, and you need that ball to have a ball signature as such to where it needs to get. It drives at about a 1 3/4 ball, and then it drops in a sunroof of a car. Guys who elbow push can't do it. It skips over the sunroof. Guys who snap like Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, that's what the Pro Throw does for you. There's a good video to watch on the product page, too, if you look at it. It'll give you examples of that elbow snap.
Awesome. Well, guys, we have Coach Chris Hixson here. Again, Coach, thank you so much for the time and jumping on the Victory podcast here. Be on the lookout for them. Humongous things coming in the future. We look forward to it here at Victory. So, Coach, thanks again for your time.
Absolutely, man.
Thank you,
guys.